Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be tackling a pretty complex but super important topic: medical technology in the EU.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area, isn't it?
Yeah,
So much potential, but also a lot of kind of controversy and challenges right now.
exactly. And to really get into the nitty-gritty, we've got three really interesting sources to dig into.
Okay.
First up, we have a press release straight from the Italian Constitutional Court. It deals with this thing called a payback system for medical devices, and it's causing quite a stir.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this. It's gotten pretty controversial, hasn't it?
It has. And to add even more fuel to the fire, we've got this opinion piece by a professor, Luca Magni, who is not holding back in his criticism of this payback system.
So we've got like the legal side and then the kind of more analytical, critical perspective.
Right. And then to zoom out even further, we have a resolution from the European Parliament. It's actually calling for some pretty major changes to the EU's medical device regulations, the MDR and IVDR, because of some big concerns about how they're being implemented.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are watching this very closely. These regulations could have huge ripple effects.
Absolutely. So the goal today is to break down all these different perspectives, kind of connect the dots, and hopefully help you understand what's at stake here.
That was good.
Okay, so let's start with this Italian payback system, because it's a really good example of how even well-intentioned regulations can have some unintended consequences.
Okay.
So basically, Italy's trying to keep healthcare costs under control. Makes sense, right? Every country struggles with that.
Right.
So they set these limits on how much each region can spend on medical devices. But here's the kicker. If a region goes over budget, the companies that supplied those devices actually have to pay back the difference.
Wait, really? So they get penalized for providing essential care?
It seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
But that's the system, and it ended up going all the way to the Constitutional Court.
Wow. And what do they say?
Well, get this, they actually upheld the payback system. Yeah, but only for the period from 2015 to 2018. They basically argued that it was like a solidaristic contribution from companies to keep the healthcare system afloat during some tough financial times.
So a necessary evil kind of thing.
Yeah, like, we get it, it's not ideal, but we needed it to keep things running smoothly, and the court kind of acknowledged that. But this is where it gets even more interesting. This Professor Magni, he's not buying it. He wrote this opinion piece where he basically tears apart this whole solidaristic contribution argument. He calls it a way to potentially mask cynical omissions of care.
Oh, wow. He doesn't hold back.
Not at all. And he's especially worried about regions that are already struggling to provide adequate health care. He's basically saying that companies might be less likely to supply devices to those regions because they're afraid of getting hit with these payback fees.
That makes sense. I mean, if you're a company, why risk it?
Exactly. And that could lead to even bigger healthcare disparities across Italy.
Yeah. So you end up with a system where the people who need the most help are actually the ones getting hurt.
Exactly. And that's what makes this whole thing so complicated. Like, the goal of controlling costs is understandable, but are they doing it in the right way? Are they actually creating more problems in the long run?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Like, you want to ensure a sustainable healthcare system, but not at the expense of patient care.
You know, this whole Italian situation, it actually reminds me of what's happening at the EU level with medical device regulations.
Oh, yeah. How so?
Well, the EU has these two big regulations, the MDR and IVDR, that are all about making sure medical devices are safe and effective.
Right. Those are like the big rule books for everything from like bandages to heart implants, right?
Exactly. And they're supposed to make things better, right? More rigorous standards, safer devices for patients. But it seems like things haven't exactly gone smoothly.
Yeah, I think smoothly might be an understatement. I mean, the European Parliament just came out with this resolution, and it's basically like a big warning signal.
Oh, really? What are they saying?
They're saying that these regulations, like the way they're written now, are actually creating more problems than they're solving.
Like what kinds of problems?
Well, one of the biggest complaints is that they're just way too complex, especially for smaller companies.
Yeah.
It's like this huge mountain of paperwork and testing requirements, and the approval process can take forever.
So even if a company develops a great new device, it could take years to actually get it to the patients who need it.
Exactly. And that's a big problem, right? Because it slows down innovation, and it could even lead to device shortages.
So it's almost like they're trying to be so careful about safety that they're actually hurting patient access in the process.
It's kind of ironic, isn't it? And the parliament is really worried about this. Their resolution actually calls for some pretty major revisions to these regulations.
So they're not just complaining, they're actually trying to do something about it.
Exactly. And they're giving the European Commission a deadline, early 2025.
Wow. That's not a lot of time.
No, it's not. But I think it shows how seriously they're taking this. They're basically saying, look, we want safe devices, but not if it means stifling innovation and preventing patients from getting the treatments they need.
Right. So going back to the Italian situation, it's almost like we're seeing the same kind of tension playing out on a bigger scale.
Absolutely. It's like this constant balancing act. You want to control costs, you want to ensure safety, but you also don't want to create so many roadblocks that you end up harming the very people you're trying to protect.
So, wow. We've covered a lot of ground, haven't we?
We have. It's pretty amazing how these two situations, like the Italian payback thing and then these EU-wide regulations, how they kind of connect.
Right. They both highlight this really tough challenge in healthcare. How do you balance the need for safety and cost control with making sure that innovation can thrive?
And that patients can actually access the latest treatments.
Right. It's like this constant push and pull, and there's no easy answer.
Definitely not.
But one thing I find really hopeful is that at least with the MDR and IVDR, the European Parliament is really pushing for change.
Oh, yeah, totally. That resolution is a big deal, giving the European Commission until early 2025 to make some serious revisions.
That's a tight deadline.
It is. It shows how urgently they want to address these problems.
Yeah, and you know what I think is even more interesting is that this isn't just a European issue.
Oh, you're right. It's a global thing.
Yeah, this tension between regulation, innovation, and access. Every healthcare system in the world is struggling with this.
Absolutely. Every country wants to protect its citizens, encourage innovation, and keep costs in check. It's just really hard to find that perfect balance.
It is. But I think that's why these conversations are so important. We need to keep talking about this, keep learning from each other, and keep pushing for solutions that actually work for everyone.
I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about people's lives, right?
Right. Exactly. And that brings us to the big takeaway for all of you listening today. We've only scratched the surface of this incredibly complex issue, but hopefully we've given you some food for thought.
Yeah. Like, this is your jumping off point. Go out there, read the European Parliament's resolution, check out Professor Magni's work, and see what other experts are saying.
Stay curious, stay informed, because these changes are going to have a real impact on the medical technology we all rely on.
They definitely will.
Well, that's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next time with another fascinating topic that hopefully gets those brain cells firing. Until then, take care and keep learning.